This is the story of a broken mind, a night filled with fear, and a young woman who trusted the wrong person. What happened behind closed doors was more than a crime. It was a nightmare that still haunts everyone who hears it. Before we explore the case, if you'd like to support the channel, hit the subscribe button and stay active. It really helps a lot. Now, let's get into it. Relationships often walk a razor-thin line between affection and volatility. What may start with intense chemistry and admiration can, over time, morph into something darker. In the early days, love can feel electrifying, full of promise, excitement, and the thrill of connection. But subtle red flags often go unnoticed, brushed off as the result of stress, fatigue, or temporary misunderstandings. When two people come together, they bring more than just their present selves. They carry with them the weight of past traumas, insecurities, and unspoken fears. For some couples, these complexities are managed with empathy and communication. For others, they quietly erode the foundation, turning love into dependence, dependence into danger. Today's case delves into one such story. A relationship that began with warmth and hope, only to unravel into confusion, fear, and irreversible tragedy. It's a tale of misplaced trust, emotional entanglement, and decisions that would ultimately cost someone their life. At what moment did affection twist into obsession? When did the dream turn into a nightmare? And was there any point where the outcome could have been changed? To find the answers, we must return to where the story first began. Herleen Dulai was born in 1991 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Raised in a close-knit, supportive household, she shared a strong bond with her parents and sisters. Outgoing and empathetic, Herleen had a natural gift for making others feel seen and understood. Her warmth made her a source of comfort to those around her. From an early age, Herleen displayed a deep curiosity about the world. Her interests were broad, but she felt especially drawn to the sciences. Biology, health, and the inner workings of the human body fascinated her. Determined to pursue a meaningful career, she enrolled in college to study biological sciences, with dreams of working in medicine or research. After earning her degree, Herleen came to a sobering realization: working in a lab or behind a desk wasn't the life she envisioned for herself. She yearned for something different, something that would ignite her passion. Fueled by the desire for a fresh start, she made a daring move to Las Vegas, a city that thrived on energy, ambition, and reinvention. For Herleen, Las Vegas wasn't just a change of scenery, it was a turning point. Soon after arriving, she dove headfirst into the world of fitness. Her transformation was nothing short of remarkable. With unwavering dedication, she built both physical strength and inner confidence. Empowered by this change, she decided to pursue a certification in personal training, eager to support others on their own wellness journeys. Clients gravitated toward her. Herleen wasn't simply crafting workout plans, she was motivating, uplifting, and helping people reclaim control of their lives. Her commitment was more than professional, it was deeply personal. Her optimism, energy, and authenticity made her stand out not only among clients but also among her peers. But beneath the surface of this success, Herleen was grappling with deeper, more existential questions. She often found herself searching for purpose, something more meaningful than reps and routines. This internal exploration led her into the realm of spirituality. She became increasingly curious about holistic healing, meditation, and metaphysical philosophies. The more she delved into these topics, the more captivated she became. Through this path, Herleen began meeting others with similar interests, people who questioned conventional thinking and sought a deeper understanding of consciousness and existence. Among them was a man who would soon become a significant figure in her life. His name was Armand. From the moment they met, he exuded an almost magnetic charm. Charismatic and smooth-talking, he could shift effortlessly between topics, leaving people feeling heard, enlightened, and intrigued. He spoke with the confidence of someone who had seen the world, struggled, grown, and emerged with clarity. Hurleen found herself drawn to his unique outlook on life. Their conversations grew more intense, centered on transformation, energy, and escaping the mental boundaries society had built. With him, she felt seen and inspired. They began spending more time together, developing an emotional and spiritual connection. Esh shared his belief that real growth required abandoning the traditional paths to self-improvement. According to him, true awakening could only come from dissolving the constraints of ordinary thinking and embracing the unknown. This philosophy soon spilled into their actions. Together, they began taking trips to isolated spots, far from city lights and modern distractions. In those quiet, off-the-grid places, they practiced methods they believed would unlock a greater truth. These sessions eventually included mind-altering substances, which Esh claimed were vital tools for accessing higher levels of consciousness. At first, Hurleen approached these experiences with curiosity and trust. She believed she was on the verge of a spiritual breakthrough, but over time, things began to shift. Her perception of the world started to distort. The boundary between insight and delusion thinned, and her grip on reality slowly unraveled. What once felt enlightening began to feel disorienting. The clarity she had been chasing was replaced with confusion, and the practices that promised freedom now felt more like a trap. Whether she realized it or not, Hurleen was being pulled into something far more dangerous than she had anticipated. Despite the growing instability, her bond with Esh deepened. Their relationship accelerated quickly, becoming emotionally intense and increasingly isolating from the outside world. As time passed, the early excitement in Hurleen and Esh's relationship began to erode, replaced by subtle but troubling changes. At first, they were easy to overlook minor shifts in his demeanor that didn't seem alarming on their own. Esh still showed affection and attentiveness, but his moods began to swing unpredictably. One moment, he would speak passionately about the nature of the universe. The next, he would fall silent, withdrawn without explanation. Sometimes, Esh would vanish entirely, ignoring texts and calls, only to reappear later without acknowledging his absence. When Herleen asked, he said he needed solitude to clear his mind, claiming he was overwhelmed by others' emotional energy and had to isolate himself to recalibrate. Herleen tried to be patient, convincing herself that his spiritual sensitivity required space, but the unpredictability left her increasingly unsettled. His teachings grew more intense, more insistent. He told Hurleen that conventional beliefs and logical thinking were chains barriers to real growth. To truly evolve, he said, she had to surrender to her intuition and detach from the world's rational constraints. His views began to border on paranoia. He talked about unseen forces, about people being infected by dark energy, and about the necessity of purging internal imbalances. One day, he told Herleen that she too was carrying something within her, something that needed to be purified. He claimed he could sense a disruption in her energy field, an invisible blockage keeping her from reaching her full potential. As time went on, his behavior grew more erratic. Some days, he claimed he could read her thoughts or see her future. Other times, he snapped at her for questioning him, insisting she put her complete trust in him and him alone. What began as spiritual exploration was slowly mutating into something darker. Esh introduced the idea of ancient ritual ceremonial practices. He said that could release a person from all inner restrictions. At first, Herleen dismissed them as symbolic, metaphoric ideas, but then Esh began to pressure her to participate. He insisted that real transformation required full surrender. That fear was the final obstacle to awakening. She didn't see it immediately, but Esh's beliefs had begun to control not only how he lived, but how he expected her to live. He demanded obedience, loyalty, silence in the face of doubt. The dynamic between them had shifted, no longer a shared journey, but something possessive and domineering. On the evening of July 15th, 2020, Herleen Dulai joined Armand at his Las Vegas apartment. They had agreed to conduct what described as a spiritual cleansing, something he claimed would finally remove the energy blockages holding Herleen back. He had been talking about this for weeks, building up to what he called a final breakthrough. As part of the preparation, insisted they use psychoactive substances. He claimed these were necessary to break through mental limitations and reach a higher realm of awareness. Herleen hesitated, though she had participated in similar experiences before. Something about this night felt different. The dosage was higher. The atmosphere felt charged, heavier than usual. Not long after ingestion, the effects began to take hold. The world around Herleen distorted, shapes warped, sounds twisted, and time seemed to stretch and snap unpredictably. Instead of tranquility, she felt an overwhelming sense of disorientation and dread. Her body felt heavy, unresponsive, and her thoughts became difficult to control. Meanwhile, Esh's behavior grew increasingly manic. He spoke rapidly, eyes wild, declaring that he could see into other dimensions, that truths were being revealed to him from beyond. But his focus soon shifted onto her. He told Herleen there was something unnatural inside her, an energy that needed to be released immediately. His tone had changed, the warmth was gone. His voice became commanding, accusatory. When she tried to protest, tried to ground the situation, in reality, erupted. He accused her of resisting, of clinging to darkness. His words became more frantic. He insisted she was carrying something evil, and that he had no choice but to act. Then, the situation turned violent. He grabbed her wrists. She struggled, but he was overpowering. Fueled by adrenaline and distorted perception, his grip tightened. He shoved her forcefully. She fell, hitting the floor hard. But the aggression didn't stop there. In a terrifying escalation, picked up a heavy glass candle holder and struck her repeatedly. Herleen's body went limp, her movements fading, but he didn't stop. In a frenzy, he used a knife and other nearby objects, inflicting multiple severe injuries. The violence only ended when there was nothing left, when her body ceased all signs of life. The room fell silent. Finally seemed to realize what had happened. As the effects of the substances wore off, he was left with the aftermath. Blood everywhere, a lifeless body, and a creeping sense of horror. He paced the room in shock, walking back to her as if hoping she might still be alive. But there was no undoing what had been done. The following morning, July 16th, 2020, a call was placed to emergency services. On the line was Armand. His voice was uneven, disturbed, but strangely calm. He told the dispatcher that his partner was dead. He said it was an accident, that he had tried to help her, but it was too late. When officers arrived at the apartment, opened the door himself. His body was smeared in blood. Rather than panic, his demeanor was weary, detached. Officers found the apartment in disarray. Signs of a violent confrontation were everywhere. Blood stained the floor, the furniture, even the walls. In the middle of it all lay Herleen. Her skin had lost all color. Bruises darkened her face and neck, and deep wounds marked her body. Her hands were scratched, likely from trying to defend herself. What the officers witnessed wasn't just the result of one impulsive act. It was the end of a night filled with delusion, fear, and deadly obsession. The scene was haunting. The weight of what had occurred hung heavily in the air. However, one detail stood out immediately to investigators. The bathroom appeared suspiciously clean, though faint streaks of blood remained on the tiles. Most of the surfaces had clearly been scrubbed. It was an unsettling contrast to the chaotic violence visible elsewhere in the apartment. In the washing machine, officers discovered blood-stained clothing. Even the clothes was wearing appeared to have been recently laundered. raising serious questions about his actions following the incident. Near the bed, 2 candles sat unlit. Yet there were faint traces of melted wax on Herleen's skin, a disturbing and unexplained element that hinted at some kind of ritualistic activity. On the nightstand, investigators found 2 knives, a standard kitchen knife and a folding utility blade. Both were marked with dried blood. It was apparent that someone had tried, albeit unsuccessfully, to clean up and conceal what had happened. As they surveyed the scene, officers also discovered a suitcase near the apartment entrance. Inside were personal belongings, documents, and a stack of cash. It appeared as though Esh had been preparing to flee. Whether he changed his mind or simply ran out of time remained unclear. When questioned, Esh's statements were erratic and contradictory. At first, he claimed to remember nothing. Then, he asserted that Herleen had attacked him first, and he had acted in self-defense. But his story didn't add up. He had no injuries or defensive wounds, no evidence to support the idea of a physical struggle in which he was the victim. Officers observed his behavior closely. Esh was camerally so. He displayed no panic, no sorrow, no fear. He never asked for help or appeared shocked by what had taken place. This emotional detachment alarmed investigators. It was not the reaction of someone overwhelmed by a tragic accident, it was something else entirely. Forensics experts conducted a thorough analysis of the apartment. In the refrigerator, they found bottles of alcohol. On the table, there were residues of a powdery substance, later confirmed to be illegal hallucinogens. The pieces were falling into place. Whatever had happened that night, it had taken place under the influence of powerful, mind-altering substances. And someone, most likely Esh, had tried to stage the aftermath, to look less incriminating. By the time Esh was escorted to the back of a police cruiser, the evidence against him was already overwhelming. He didn't struggle or protest. He said only one thing to the officers: "I didn't want it to end this way." The investigation was just beginning, but authorities already doubted every word of his self-defense claim. Their attention quickly shifted toward uncovering who Armand really was and what had led him to this moment. It didn't take long for detectives to trace his history. Armand, they learned, was not his real name. He was born Akshaya Kubiak in 1981 in India. He spent his early years between Japan and the United States. From a young age, his parents immersed him in spiritual teachings, Eastern medicine, and meditation. As a teenager, Akshay showed a deep fascination with esoteric philosophies and alternative healing. He trained in massage therapy and energy healing techniques, slowly building a personal identity centered around mysticism and transcendence. But it was in 2011 that his life took a dramatic turn. That year, he caught the attention of Garen James, the founder of a high-end escort agency. With his striking appearance and exotic mystique, Akshay became a natural fit for the elite companionship industry. The opportunity brought him to Las Vegas, where he quickly became part of an exclusive world one filled with wealthy clients, luxury, and the promise of fast money. In 2012, his public profile expanded when he was invited to appear on the reality TV show Gigolos. The show offered him visibility, fame, and a stream of high-paying clients. But behind the glamour, there were signs that his spiritual persona was evolving into something more unstable, something darker and more obsessive. However, with notoriety came a new set of challenges. The constant pressure to remain in the spotlight, fierce competition among peers, and the unrelenting demands of the adult entertainment industry began to wear on Esh. To maintain the image of a desirable, successful man, he sought out artificial means to preserve his physique and appeal. He began using steroids initially to enhance his physical presence for clients and the camera. But eventually, that evolved into a deeper dependence on stronger, more dangerous substances. What began as a quest for external validation soon spiraled into a reliance on both chemical highs and public attention. This toxic combination fueled a pattern of increasingly aggressive behavior. In the Las Vegas nightlife scene, he was frequently involved in heated altercations. Police records show multiple incidents, including arrests for driving under the influence. Friends and acquaintances noted that his personality had become volatile, unpredictable outbursts, mood swings, and bursts of paranoia were becoming more common. When the reality show, Gigolos, came to an end in 2016, so did Esh's brief period of mainstream fame. Without the exposure the show provided, his public image faded. His income declined sharply, and his efforts to transition into other areas of entertainment, acting, modeling, even coaching, fell flat. The money he had earned during his peak years was already gone, spent on luxury cars, extravagant parties, and indulgent living. By 2020, Armand, once a man surrounded by glamour, attention, and money, was now living in a modest, rented apartment. His source of income had dwindled to sporadic paid encounters with longtime fans of the show. He was no longer a rising star, just a fading figure clinging to the remnants of his past fame. But Esh was not just looking for money anymore. He was searching for meaning. In his desperation to redefine himself, he plunged deeper into spiritual ideologies and mystical teachings. He immersed himself in Eastern philosophies, ancient rituals, and fringe beliefs that blurred the line between self-discovery and delusion. No longer content with being seen as just a physical commodity, he began constructing a new identity, one in which he was a spiritual guide, a visionary capable of perceiving hidden truths, a man who believed he could reshape reality through energy, intention, and willpower. So when he met Herleen, it wasn't just companionship he was seeking, it was something much more dangerous. Validation of his delusions, a follower for his philosophy, and ultimately, someone to bear the weight of the chaos that had consumed his mind. However, under the influence of powerful, mind-altering substances, Ash's spiritual ideologies twisted into something darker, an obsession. What had once been philosophical curiosity became delusional conviction. His relationship with Herleen was no longer about connection or affection. To him, she represented a path to reclaiming control over his crumbling identity, over the chaos of his life. He no longer saw her as a partner, but as a subject of his will, someone whose destiny he believed he could shape. On that fateful night, with his mind fractured by years of substance abuse and spiraling self-delusion, Ash finally broke. Whatever remnants of reason or empathy he once possessed were drowned in a haze of paranoia, ritualistic fantasy, and unrestrained violence. The investigators who pieced together the final hours of Erin's life came to one disturbing conclusion. This crime wasn't sudden, nor was it random. Armand had been on this path for years. The night of July 15, 2020, was merely the catastrophic end of a long, slow unraveling. The trial began in 2021. Prosecutors charged him with first-degree intentional harm, arguing that Herleen had been the victim of a brutal, sustained attack, one that showed clear signs of rage and intention. They emphasized the inconsistency of Ash's story, the disturbing condition of the crime scene, and the attempt to conceal what had happened. The defense, meanwhile, built their case around claims of diminished responsibility. They painted Ash as a man under immense psychological strain, overwhelmed by emotional instability and the influence of powerful substances. Ash himself insisted that he never meant to hurt Herleen. In his public statements, he said he loved her, that what happened that night was not a reflection of who he truly was. He appeared stoic in court, rarely expressing emotion, rarely acknowledging the full gravity of what he had done. The public reaction was sharply divided. For many, especially after the horrifying details emerged, there was no excuse. The brutality of the crime, the obvious attempts to hide it, and the spiritual manipulation that preceded it sparked outrage. They called for the harshest possible sentence, But others, fans of Gigolos, followers from his spiritual circles, and people who had once admired him remained convinced he was a victim of his own unraveling mind. Some defended him on social media. Fundraising pages appeared online to support his legal team. For them, he was a tragic figure, fallen but not evil. Herleen's family, however, never wavered. They were resolute in their pursuit of justice. Her parents and sisters gave heartfelt interviews, painting a vivid picture of a kind, compassionate, and intelligent young woman, someone who had her entire life ahead of her. They described how Hurleen had been manipulated, isolated, and ultimately destroyed by someone she trusted. No defense, they said, could erase the suffering she endured. No explanation could excuse what had been done. In December 2021, the verdict was finally delivered. Armand was found guilty of the crime against Herleen. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Under the sentencing guidelines, he would be eligible to apply for parole after serving 8 years. For Herleen's family, the ruling brought little comfort. They publicly expressed disappointment, believing the sentence was far too lenient for such a brutal and calculated act. But the court had taken into account the defense's arguments concerning his mental state at the time of the killing. That, in the end, influenced the outcome. Ash remains incarcerated. His scheduled release date is in 2041. However, he could become eligible for parole as early as 2029, just 9 years after the night that ended Herleen's life. Whether he will ever be granted parole remains uncertain. Yet, even with the case closed and the sentence handed down, the story is far from over. Questions still linger. What truly happened in Ash's mind that night? Was it purely a drug-fueled psychotic break, or was there deeper, more conscious intent? Why did he attempt to clean the scene? And why, after all of it, did he still call the police? Was it remorse or fear? Most haunting of all, does he truly understand what he's done? Years later, the case continues to stir debate. To some, he is a murderer who manipulated spiritual beliefs as a veil for control and violence. To others, he is a man broken by fame, drugs, and delusions, someone who lost his way and took an innocent soul with him. But one truth stands clear. Herleen is gone, and the loss left a permanent mark on all who knew her. Her life, a light extinguished far too soon, remains the heart of this tragedy. No verdict, no theory, and no debate can ever bring her back. And for those left behind, justice, however imperfect, must now take the place of closure. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support truly means a lot. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, leave a comment, and share it with others. It really helps the channel grow. Your engagement makes a huge difference. See you in the next one.